Hi, in this video I'm going to be answering the question, why do people have panic attacks? Okay, I'm Orla Kirby, I am a therapist and I help people to move themselves away from severe anxiety and or OCD. I do this using NLP and Solution Focused Hypnotherapy. And really by the end of working with me, I am looking for people to be feeling really very deeply calm at a deep base level, to be feeling more confident, more creative, more fully themselves, and really able to create the kind of life they want to create for themselves. So, why do people have panic attacks? It does seem quite mysterious a lot of the time, right? People are often very puzzled by this and often find it very comforting. That's why I've put it in here, right? This is mainly kind of like how-to type video series, but I've put this kind of why question here because people find it very comforting to know, right? It can be very bewildering thinking, why is this happening to me? Where did this come from? Sometimes people really know where it came from, right? So, for example, there was a very unfortunate medical event where something went wrong and there was, a lot of pain and, whatever reminds them of that thing. Could be doctors or hospitals or, something else. Whenever something reminds them of that event, the person goes into a panic attack, so they're very clear about where they came from, right? Someone was in a car accident, every time they get in a car, they have a panic attack, right? Something like that, sometimes it's very clear to the person, right? I'll explain a bit more about the mechanism of that. But for some people, it's not clear, right? It might be sometimes clear and sometimes not. They might think, well, sometimes I can sort of think, oh, it's because of that, but sometimes I'm just guessing, and sometimes it just seems like everything's fine, and then I have a panic attack, right? So, this is confusing. It is bewildering in a way, right? And at the same time, there are some things that can help us to understand it, even if we can't be kind of definitely clear in any particular case, right? So, first of all, to explain the basic mechanism of what's happening in that more kind of clear-cut thing of like, say someone's been in a car accident, they got badly injured, maybe no one died, thank goodness, but they were badly injured, it took a long time to recover, it was all very frightening at the time, really frightening. They might have died, say, but they didn't, they're okay now, and then every time they go in a car, or maybe even every time they see a car, they can feel themselves either having a panic attack or going towards having a panic attack, right? So what's happening in that person's mind is, for example, they go to get in their friend's car and their early mind is asking this question. Their early mind is kind of the same mind as the dinosaurs had, this very, very early stage in evolution that it came from, this mind, much older than us human beings, very, very early, kind of reptile mind, early mind, is asking the question, what happened last time? What happened last time, right? And the car is throwing up in this kind of pattern matching system in our early minds. It's just kind of like search, like a computer system searching. And it comes up against this template from the past with this very strong emotion, right? Imagine in that car accident, there would have been so much fear, maybe anger as well, terror, pain, intense, all of these very intense emotions, right? Intense negative emotions. So that template, therefore, is going to be very prominent, right? The early mind cares about the templates that have very strong negative or very strong positive emotion, right? And the more strong that emotion in either direction, the more prominent that template will be, right? So it's going to be a very clear hit, right? The car is going to really easily pull up this very prominent, very packed with negative emotion template of the accident. Now, the person may consciously be aware of remembering, or they may not, right? It's going to happen very, very quickly, and a lot of that is happening at an unconscious level. Essentially, the early mind isn't really capable of thinking in a complicated way about the future or about the past. So to the early mind, it's as though that same thing is literally happening right now, right? That horrific accident where that person thought they might die, where they were very worried about the other people in the car, where they were in huge amounts of pain, all of this fear and pain and just awful experience, all of that is happening right now for the person, just in that moment of opening the door of their friend's car. So, of course, the early mind wants to prevent that, right? Wants to it knows at a very deep level that experience, and it's correct, right, in its judgment of that experience with the car accident. Initially, there was a lot of danger there, right? So it's asking, what happened last time? What happened last time? It wants to know, how did I survive? Did I survive? And if I survived, then you're encouraged to do exactly the same thing you did last time to allow your survival this time around, right? So at the time, the early mind can tell that there was a lot of fight or flight response. So it's going to send you into a really strong fight or flight response now, right? And that's going to be very quick, because it's not something you're deciding slowly with your conscious mind. It's an unconscious, immediate reaction. So that's why it can kind of hit you from nowhere, this panic attack thing, right? And in that instance, you might at least afterwards know what's going on, or you might even expect it in advance. If this has happened a lot of times with cars, you might understand that to some extent, or maybe you fully understand it. However, sometimes people can have panic attacks and there isn't such a clear, obvious kind of thing at play for them, right? Maybe someone seems to always have, a panic attack when they're in an enclosed space, right? But they haven't really had a very negative experience in an enclosed space. So then why am I having that? What's going on there, right? The thing is that essentially, probably at some point that person may not even be aware of, their stress levels were overly high at the same time as they were in an enclosed space. Now, if you think of all the times we were in enclosed spaces, that's so often, right? In modern human life, you get in a car and you get in a lift and you get in that would just be happening throughout life, right? For most people, certainly in the UK, in any kind of industrial country, you'd be in a lot of enclosed spaces quite often. So at some point, if this person is now in their 50s, say, it could be that at some point when they were a teenager, they had very elevated stress levels, right? Imagine they were doing exams and they'd just broken up with, the boyfriend or girlfriend that they had at the time, and that was all very upsetting and stressful. And maybe they had some really hard thing going on with their family as well, and their stress levels are really high, yeah. And they got in a lift, right, to go up to the next floor of their sixth form college, right? Now, they're not necessarily having a panic attack in the lift at that point at 17, right? But they are experiencing these two things together. They're experiencing the enclosed space at the same time as having a very, very elevated stress level. And perhaps to get to that elevated stress level, their stress level may have been high for some time, maybe been creeping up and up and up and up, right? And they are at this particularly emotional moment and, very, very high stress levels while they're in this lift, right? But it's not because of the lift or anything, but the two things have coincided. So in terms of the template that's being made in their early mind, they now have a template of being in a very elevated, high stress situation emotionally at the same time as being in an enclosed space, right? And that could mean that, maybe, the next week, maybe they get back together with the partner that they broke up with. Maybe the family stuff even calms down a bit, or maybe not, right? But maybe something gets better in some way. Maybe they get offered a place at a university they want to go to, and that gives them some hope. Or maybe, or maybe things go on being really awful, or, who knows, right? But say even if things start to get better or things improve in some way, that template has been formed, right? And that means that then 2 years later or 5 years later, let's imagine that things are loads better in 5 years, right? In terms of how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis. They're surrounded with people who they feel like they respect and the people respect them. And things are generally going pretty well for them, and they're feeling reasonably happy and reasonably calm, and they get in a lift and they start having a panic attack, right? They start having a panic attack, and that feels very strange and very overwhelming, because where does that come from, this intense feeling? And maybe they feel like they're going to die, or maybe they feel like they can't breathe, or of course people experience panic attacks in all different ways. I don't want to represent them in one particular way, or they could go into any of the various experiences of panic attack. And of course, because that's then very frightening it's like it's compounded, right? Because then their response to this panic is adding to the panic, and it becomes very, very, very intense, right? And all of this is because of that earlier lift time, but they're not going to now, at like 23, remember that time when they were in the lift and when they were feeling a very high level of emotion, because so much else has happened in their life and so much else happened to them as a child and as a teenager, and we're not capable of holding that much information in our minds, right? At least not at a conscious level. So you can kind of see, right, how then, now that that's happened once in a lift as well, what about the next one? The next time they get in a lift, they might be a bit concerned, right? Or there might even be some conscious and definitely unconscious. That's then another really strong template of very, very high elevated stress while being in a lift, right? So unconsciously that's there, and consciously they're now maybe going to be a bit more wary as they get into the next lift. They're thinking, oh, what if that happens again, perhaps? What if that happens again? And all of that together can create another, perhaps even more dramatic instance, right? And you can see how this kind of builds on itself, right? And you have templates, replicating templates. We also make templates when we remember something, right? So when we remember something, or when we expect something is going to happen, right? Any of those activities form another template. So you can see how quite quickly this person could develop a real thing around lifts and panic attacks linking with lifts, almost out of not nowhere, right? And but the thing is, it doesn't even have to be from a major trauma. Sometimes there is, they're absolutely, panic attacks can be a result of very, very major trauma and significant, really intense, awful stuff that's happened in people's lives. But there doesn't need to have been, right? It simply can be a case of there was overly elevated stress at a particular point associated with a particular thing, and that thing or situation or colour or whatever occurs again, and that brings it all up again, right? Because of the early mind trying to protect you. So hopefully that makes sense a bit in terms of where it could be coming from. Another possibility, right, and often it's a few things at once, or it can be, but another possibility is simply that right now your stress levels or your anxiety levels are very elevated, very high for whatever reason. That could be a range of different reasons, and it's simply almost that you spill over into that high level panic, right? So if my stress levels are very, very high, and then I get bad news, or my stress levels are high, I'm super, super worried and anxious, and then something disappointing happens, or something unexpected happens, or something gets cancelled that I was looking forward to, or someone lets me down, or it could be even a minor thing. I might not even know it's because of that thing, right? But something extra is added to my plate in some way, and I can just very easily almost tip up into panic attack, right? So that's also possible, right? There doesn't even have to be a trigger as such, right? Okay, so hopefully that gives you a bit of a kind of broad picture of why people have panic attacks. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about why is learning self-hypnosis so helpful for moving away from experiencing panic attacks, or at the very least reducing them and reducing the frequency and the intensity of them. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. If you do like these videos, do like the video and subscribe underneath, and I'll see you in the next one.